these. Correct. So our HTML, we have a few, just a couple different sections. So we have our one section right here. It's just got a heading, just says hover button. And then we have our actual button, which we're going to be hovering over and changing those styles. Then we also have another section, which just has another heading and then a table. And we just gave that table a class. And then just our normal table structure with our T head, our T body, and then all of our T rows inside. Let's take a look at our CSS. So Caroline, could you start us off? Could you do 1 through 4, please?
Yes. Yeah. So on line 1, there's a new CSS style rule set selecting the class custom button with an opening curly brace. On line 2, there's the padding property with the 0.5 rem, 1.5 rem value. On line 3, there's the font size property with the 1.25 rem value. And on line 4, there's a closing curly brace.
You.
Thank
Rukaya, can you do 6 through 10? The way that we'll read line 6, you say on line 6, there's a new CSS rule set for all classes custom button that are being covered.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part?
That are being hovered.
That are being hovered. Okay. So on line 6, we have a new CSS rule set selecting all classes with the value.
All custom button classes.
All custom button classes that are being hovered with opening curly brace. On line 7, we have the color property with the value of white. On line 8, we have the background color property with the value of black. On line 9, we have the cursor property with the value of pointer. And on line 10, we have the closing curly brace.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Noah, you'll get a little bit of a fun one. So the way that we're going to read line 12, there's a new CSS rule set for all TR children that are a direct child to a T head that are within a table with a class of striped. So I'll do that one more time. On line 12, there's a new CSS rule set for all TR elements that are a direct child to a T head that are within a table with a class of striped. Go ahead and give it a shot.
So on line 12, there's a new CSS rule set for the TR that are directed children of the T head parent within the table of class, right?
Perfect. Yep, nailed it. And then 13 and 14 as well, please. Noah?
14. It's there's a new there's a value of white color assigned to color property. And there's a black color value assigned to background color property.
Yep, just remember to also call out those line numbers.
And line number 14.
Awesome. Thank you. Caroline, you'll get the next fun one. Would you like a demo or give it a shot?
Yes, please, another demo so I can do it correctly. Thank you.
Yeah. So on line 17, there's a new CSS rule set for all TR elements that are nth child odd, that are a direct child to a T body, that are within a table with a class of striped. I'll do it one more time. There's a new CSS rule set for all TR elements that are nth child odd, that are a direct child to a T body, that are within a table with a class of striped.
Okie dokie. On line 17, there's a new CSS style rule set with a TR element child that is the nth child odd, direct child of the T body element that belongs to the table element of the class striped.
Okay.
Thank you. And then on line 18, the background color property has a value of light gray, and line 19, the closing curly brace.
Perfect. Yeah, nailed it. Thank you. Take a look at the quiz question. Rukaya, what is a pseudo class?
So pseudo classes are basically the keywords that are assigned uh, with our selector, basically.
Yeah.
So, for
Sorry.
example, hover, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a pseudo class specifically is like, it's kind of like a keyword that gets added to a selector of how I can target a specific state and apply styling based off of that state. So just like how Kaya mentioned with hover, hover is kind of like this keyword, and now I'm only applying styles to an element that is being hovered, like so. So that's where pseudo classes allow us to be helpful, which leads into the next question, Trey. Trey, why are CSS pseudo classes useful for, or what are they useful for? When added to a selector, it specifies a special state of the selected element, especially useful to highlight the user's position. Yeah, exactly. So they're really useful to kind of highlight specific elements, so they can really help draw a user's attention somewhere. So that way, if you're hovering over a button, you change the styles. It's like a nice visual indicator that something's clickable. I'm not sure if you've ever gone to a website and then you like hovered over something and you're like, can I click this? Can I not click this? Like you didn't really get any sort of like visual feedback that it was clickable. Well, just by adding, bits of styling, using these pseudo classes and whatnot, it can really just help pull together the whole application and just kind of have like this nice polished feel. Awesome. Did anyone have any initial questions or anything as they were working through this one? Pull up our.
I just wanna see more about like using classes and using like a division, like for example, like taking a group of elements. I just want to see.
Yes, we'll have an exercise later on called CSS layout classes, and you're gonna really see the power of classes and why we'll use divs and whatnot.
Oh,
as well.
awesome! Yeah, that's.
Caroline?
Yes, I was wondering about the nth child.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, for example, the nth child can be added to any class, or does it have to be always a child of the parent?
So it depends on where you add nth child to. So you can see right here, there's no space between the TR and the nth child, right? So when I hover over the selector, when I say nth child odd, I'm specifically referring to the TR element. So what I'm saying is every TR element that is odd. So in this case, this is the first TR element, right? So this is odd, so these styles get applied here. This is the second TR element, which is even, so these styles don't get applied here. This is the third one, which is odd, so these styles get applied here. So when we do nth child like this, we're specifically saying if this element, where in this hierarchy see, is that a child or is that an even or an odd child? But if I add a space, now I'm looking for elements inside of my TR. And so now this is going to be doing inside of my TR, well, this is odd and this is odd, and it would apply our styles there. So it depends on if you're using spaces or if you're not using spaces. But if you aren't using spaces and you're doing exactly like what we're doing right here, we're specifically looking for the TR elements and we're finding where they appear in the DOM, how many times. This is the first one, this is the second one, etc., etc.
And there is only an odd and even?
No, you can get really crazy with it. So like you can do like very complex selectors. So for instance, like you could do stuff like this, where you like do like a whole bunch of math and you can like change essentially like where it goes. So odd is essentially the equivalent of doing 2n plus 1. Even is the equivalent of doing 2n. You can just put in one number and it would only target that specific child. So you can do a lot of different types of selectors. I don't like to use nth child all that often because I find it very confusing with like all of this math stuff. So if I ever do use nth child, I usually just do odd or even. But I usually find other ways of applying styles, just because I don't really like nth child. But
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Why have you complicated that? Couldn't you have just written TR with the nth child and, just done that? Why give it like table, class, stripe, body, and,
Well, what if I had two tables? What if I only wanted to apply the styles to one of the tables? If I just did TR and child odd, then anytime I ever have any TR, so if I have two different tables, it's going to apply the background color to that. So now I would have two tables with the same styling. So that's why I did the table striped. So that way I'm only specifically targeting this one table. I mean, in our example, we only have one table, but let's say that I had two. This way I'm specifically only targeting the one table that I want. And then in our tables, I have a T head and I have a T body, but they both have TRs. So to make sure that I'm not applying the background color to the TR that's in the T head, well, that's why I specifically put the T body so that I'm only targeting the TRs inside of the T body. So although it's more complicated, what I'm actually doing is I'm being more specific so that I'm specifically only targeting and applying these styles to those specific elements.
Oh, we could have also done this in a way where we could have given classes to the TRs that we wanted to actually highlight and then just not do the nth child, right?
You could have done that, but then now let's say that I wanted to add more rows to my table. Well, now if I wanted to do that, I would have to go give them classes again too. Whereas by doing something this with end child, it's already going to account for any time I ever add new elements. So now I only need to update my HTML and my styles will still get updated automatically. Whereas if I was doing it via classes, I would have to update my HTML and give it the same class. So it's just saving me a little bit more work. But yes, there's, as Brett likes to say, there's multiple ways to skin the proverbial cat. So there's multiple ways of accomplishing it. So this can be technically, quote unquote, more complicated. There's another reason kind of why we're doing this. We're going to learn about something called the cascade, and we're going to be learning about specificity and essentially what styles win out over other styles. So the more selectors you use, the more specific it is, which means that it will override other styles that are less specific. So there's instances where you kind of want to be more complicated because you want to make sure that these styles that you're specifically applying to that element are always going to kind of win and override any other styles. And we'll learn a lot more about that once we get to the cascade. But that's essentially where a lot of this complicatedness can kind of come into play. Yeah.
Okay. Can I see the table striped one? Just one
in the HTML?
Yeah, in the HTML. Class striped. Okay, so you named it striped. Okay. And what about the other? So this is the whole table like this. Okay. So you named it class so you can pick it up specifically this way.
Yep. Just so that way, if I had another table, let's just copy this table. Let's add another one. Let me get rid of the class. So that way now if I have two tables, I'm only applying my styles uniquely to this one. And I'm not also applying my styles to the other table as well. So that's why I gave it a class, so that way, because if I just did table, well, now it's going to be applied to both tables. So now I'm saying specifically, I only wanted to apply it to the table with that class of stripe. In case I had multiple tables, I'm only uniquely targeting that one.
Could you just keep it like this and pin it in the Slack, please?
Yes, I'll send it. Yep.
I'm sorry, Sean. Can you please show us the HTML as to how you wrote that? Where is the striped class?
This is the second one that I created. So
oh, I see. Oh,
I was just doing it for the example. Yeah.
And I can see section. So a section is like div, where like containing
Kind of, yeah.
Other elements like together. Like,
so div is just, section is more semantic than div because it's specifically saying this is a section of the web page, whereas in a div can necessarily be anything. A div could be a section of the web page, but a div could also just be content inside of a column or whatnot. So
a section is better to use, right?
In this specific context, not always. It depends on what it is that you're writing.
And all the changes, so everything in section, if we do in CSS section, and try to add the changes going to be applied to all children of the section.
No, not all properties are inheritable. Only certain properties are inheritable. So in CSS, most properties, most styles, you have to apply to the element individually. Its children will not inherit it. There's only certain properties that are inheritable, and we'll cover that in a future exercise.
So why did you include the H2 and bud section?
Because I'm grouping them together. They're all related.
Because we were gonna do this to apply changes to
Not for CSS, just for organizational and for accessibility. So that our DOM tree, what is in this section, it's only the content inside of here. That's it. What is inside of this section? Only the content inside of here.
So like organization.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So I have two questions. One of them, since we're here on line 13, you've used the entity instead of like the symbol, right? So I mean, why is that better?
Apostrophes, they're kind of it matters more so if you were to do it in JavaScript. Like if I were to update an element's text content in JavaScript, because apostrophe is also like a quote. So if I tried to do if I was using single quotes for my strings in JavaScript and then I had an apostrophe, well then it's gonna think that I'm trying to terminate the string early. So in that case, it would have been better to use the HTML entity, so that way it's kind of fully there. In theory, I could have just done the apostrophe and would have still just worked. It's just mainly just accounting for, you know, I guess across all browsers just to make sure. But in theory, with the apostrophe, you didn't necessarily need to include the HTML entity. From HTML entities, I basically, if it's not on a keyboard, then I'll use an HTML entity for it. If it's on a keyboard, there are HTML entities usually for certain stuff, like what we saw with the apostrophe, but you could have gotten away with just doing the apostrophe as well. Same with like a space. If you do a space, that's also totally valid, but there's also an HTML entity for a space, which is this right here. So it just kind of, I wouldn't say there's a specific reason that I was using. If I was doing it in JavaScript, I would have done an HTML entity, but writing it directly in your HTML, you could have gotten away with just doing the apostrophe itself.
So you added the space and then you put in the entity for the space. So would that add like two spaces since we had a space and then the entity?
Yes. So watch. So if I do am and then let me do @nbsp, you can see it's a mess, but you can see there's no space between the M and the space. But you see how there is a space between I'm and A right here. So, and then let me get rid of it just to showcase that. I get rid of it. You can see there's no space. And so if I had a space and then I did another NBSP, it's kind of hard to see, but yes, there is extra. Yeah.
Okay. And my second question was, can you go back to CSS? I think it was there. Yeah, okay. So we've got a table with the class of striped, and then we've immediately written t head. And then we've got that greater than symbol to show that it's like a parent of tr, right? So why haven't we put another symbol between the table and the t head?
We could have. Specifically what this symbol is the greater than symbol, is it's looking for direct children. Meaning, in this case, the t head. Who is the direct child to a t head? The tr. The th, for instance, is a grandchild. So the th's direct parent is not the t head. The th's direct parent is the tr. Its grandparent is the t head. So when I use this greater than symbol, and if I hover over the selector, you can see it's actually telling me what it's selecting. So I'm selecting the tr element, whose direct parent is a t head. You can see there's three little ellipses or three dots between t head and table, right? So what a space means in CSS is it means somewhere. Somewhere within this table, there is a t head. I don't know if it's a direct parent. I don't know if it's a grandparent. I don't know if it's a great-great-grandparent, but somewhere inside of that table, there is a t head. So in theory, since the t head is a direct child to the table with the class of stripes, I probably could have done the direct child again, because I'm specifically targeting that one. But we kind of just wanted to show you how you could also use spaces to do kind of similar things. But in theory, yes, you could have also done that and it would have done the exact same thing. because the T head is a direct child to the table, but that's essentially the differences. A space is just saying somewhere inside. I don't know which level inside, whereas in the greater than symbol is specifically saying direct child, indirect parent.
So if we didn't have a T head and a T body, if we only had like TRs directly, could we have also, okay, wait, no, but okay, so forget the TR. If we were doing it for the TD, right, and there was no T head, and we only wrote table with a class of striped and then space and TD.
Yep.
That would have worked, right? Like, yeah.
And then it applies to every single table data.
I'm not talking about for the styling, but just like to target it.
Yes. So now it's targeting any TD element that is inside of a table. So regardless of it's in the T head, the T body, where in the rows, it's just saying as long as there's a TD somewhere in between the opening and closing table tags, the styles will get applied to it. Awesome. Only other thing I wanted to talk about is, let's inspect this. Okay. So when I hover over my custom button, right, or when I inspect it, you see I see all these styles right here, right? Well, when I hover over it, you can see that I'm applying certain styles to it on hover. I'm changing the color, I'm changing the background color, I'm changing the cursor. But when I hover over it, you can see on my inspector, I can't see the styles. I can't see what styles are actually being applied when the button's being hovered. Well, it's kind of a pain because then like, how am I supposed to know, what if I wanted to change it? Am I just going to flip back and forth between my code to kind of see what's being applied, make some tweaks? So what there is there's this little state thing in the inspector. You can see it says :hub. And we click on that and you can force an element state. So I currently have my button selected right here. If I click hover, it's forcing the button to be hovered for me already. So now you can see that the hover styles are already being applied. And I can now see the hovered styles specifically in my inspector like that. So whenever we're working with hovers or any of these kind of pseudo states, and we want to be able to see what the actual state of that would look like in the inspector, and rather than having to constantly keep trying to hover and look, you can force it so that way it will hold it and then you can change it. So now I'm like, oh, rather than black, maybe I want this to be yellow. Rather than white, maybe I want this to be black. And then I could still see my changes kind of as I'm updating it so that I don't have to worry about keeping going back and forth and whatnot. And then I would go rewrite my changes inside of here. Any questions about this with the forcing the state and whatnot? Any final questions about pseudo classes in general? All right, let me stop my share, stop our recording.